While I was at the doctor's office, my daughter-in-law brought a cleaning crew to my house and sent me a bill for $50,000. That was what I found when I returned that afternoon. An absurd invoice in my trembling hands and 5 strangers moving through my home as if they owned it. But I discovered something much worse that same night. Jessica hadn't hired any cleaning crew. She had called 5 relatives from her family, foreigners who didn't even speak my language, to move into my house for 3 months, maybe longer. And when I went to her house that night to confront her, with a surprise she never imagined, and she opened the door with that arrogant smile on her face, everything changed forever. But let me tell you from the beginning. That morning, I left early for my routine medical appointment. Normal checkups, blood pressure, blood work, the typical things for a 68-year-old woman trying to stay healthy. I left my house locked, clean, tidy, as always, as it had been for the 40 years I lived there, with my late husband. When I returned around 3 in the afternoon, the front door was wide open. My heart skipped a beat. I thought of a robbery, of intruders. I clutched my purse to my chest and entered slowly, my legs shaking. And then I heard the voices. Laughter. Strange music. The sound of suitcases being dragged across the hardwood floor that I myself had polished for years. I entered the living room and froze. There were 5 unknown people in my house. 5 strangers moving with total freedom, as if the place belonged to them. A woman in her 40s was sitting on my late husband's armchair, eating grapes from my fruit bowl, talking on the phone, and laughing hysterically. A young man was carrying a huge suitcase up the stairs toward the second-floor bedrooms. My bedrooms, where I kept the memories of a lifetime. 2 children were running down the hallway, screaming in a language I didn't recognize. Another man was browsing the shelves of my library, touching my books with dirty hands. I just stood there in the entryway, invisible, like a ghost in my own home. And then I saw her. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, was coming down the stairs with firm steps, dressed as if she owned the place. She was wearing high heels, a tight dress, her hair perfectly styled. She moved her hands with that arrogance that had always made me feel small, insignificant. When she saw me, she didn't even seem surprised. She didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. On the contrary, she approached me with a cold smile, held out a white envelope, and placed it in my hands without a word. I opened it with trembling fingers. It was an invoice, a bill for $50,000. $50,000. For deep cleaning services, it said. Specialized cleaning of the entire property, advanced disinfection, space reorganization, interior design consulting. The list went on and on, each line more absurd than the last. I read every word, feeling the blood rush to my head. I looked up at her, searching for an explanation. Some sign that this was a mistake, a sick joke. But Jessica just stared at me with those cold, calculating eyes, waiting for my reaction like someone waiting for a cornered animal to surrender. "Eleanor," she finally said, with that fake sweet voice she used when she wanted to manipulate. "We needed to get the house ready. Family from my country is arriving. People very important to me. They're going to stay here for 3 months. Maybe longer. They needed a decent, clean, presentable place. You understand, right?" I looked around again. The strangers continued to move through my house like invading ants. One of them had just entered the kitchen and was opening my refrigerator, taking out food, helping himself as if it were nothing. Another was examining the photographs on the fireplace mantel. My photographs. My late husband's. Kevin's when he was a child. I felt something break inside me. "Jessica," I whispered, trying to stay calm. "This is my house. My house. You can't bring people here without telling me. You can't charge me $50,000 for something I never authorized." She crossed her arms and tilted her head, as if she were talking to a foolish child. "Eleanor, let's be realistic. This house is too big for you alone. Kevin and I have been covering the expenses for years. The repairs, the property taxes, everything. You practically live here for free. The least you can do is cooperate when the family needs a favor." "A favor?" I repeated, feeling tears starting to burn behind my eyes. "Invading my home is a favor? Charging me a fortune for something I never asked for is a favor?" "Don't be dramatic," she said with annoyance. It's just temporary. 3 months. You'll stay in the small storage room in the basement. It's small, but sufficient for a person your age. They need the main bedrooms. They're families. There are children. You're alone. You don't need so much space. The storage room. The place where my husband used to keep tools before he died. A dark, damp space without decent windows. She wanted me, Eleanor Rivas, in my own home, to sleep there like an employee. As if I were the intruder. As if my life, my home, my memories were worthless. I tried to speak, but my voice broke. "And Kevin?" I finally asked. "Does my son know about this?" Jessica smiled. That smile that always made me feel like I had lost before I even started. "Of course he knows. It was both of our idea. Kevin agrees with everything. In fact, he's working on the paperwork to get this property officially put in our name. It's only fair. Eleanor, we deserve it more than you do." I felt the floor move beneath my feet. My own son. The boy I had raised alone after his father died. The boy I gave everything to, absolutely everything, was planning to take my home away from me. He was letting his wife humiliate me, displace me, erase me from my own life. I said nothing more. I couldn't. I turned around, walked to the back room with the bill still in my trembling hands, and closed the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the old, narrow bed, surrounded by boxes of forgotten things, and finally let the tears fall. But as I cried, something else was growing inside me, something that had been dormant for too long. It wasn't just sadness. It was fury. It was outrage. It was the absolute certainty that this could not stand. They didn't know who I really was. Nobody did. And that night, as I listened to the laughter and music coming from my own living room, I made a decision. I was going to let them believe they had won. I was going to make myself small, invisible, submissive. But inside, I was going to prepare. Because Eleanor Rivas was not the frail, forgotten old woman they thought she was. And they were going to find that out very soon, in the most painful way possible. The first few days were a silent nightmare. I woke up that first morning in the storage room with my body aching. The bed was hard, the mattress old and sagging. I had spent the entire night listening to the sounds of strangers in my house. Laughter until the early hours. Loud music. The sound of furniture being dragged, of doors slamming shut. My house. But it didn't feel like my house anymore. I got up early, as I had always done my entire life. I washed my face with cold water in the small, rusty sink in the room. I got dressed in the same clothes from the day before, because most of my clothes were in the closet of the master bedroom. My bedroom, which was now occupied by one of Jessica's families. I left the room carefully, trying not to make noise. The kitchen was a disaster. Dirty dishes piled in the sink, leftover food on the table, greasy pots on the stove. The floor was sticky under my feet. Someone had spilled juice, and no one had bothered to clean it up. I took a deep breath and started cleaning. Not because they asked me to, but because I couldn't bear to see my kitchen in that state. I was washing dishes when I heard footsteps behind me. It was Marco, one of Jessica's relatives. A man of about 35, tall, with tattooed arms and a look that made me uncomfortable. "Good morning," I said softly. He didn't even answer me. He walked over to the refrigerator, opened it, took out milk, juice, eggs, ham. He put everything on the table and sat down, waiting. As if I were the maid, as if it were my job to prepare his breakfast. I just stood there, my hands wet, staring at him. "What are you waiting for?" he finally said, in a forced, broken English. "I'm hungry. Make some food." I felt my blood boil, but I said nothing. I dried my hands, took the ingredients, and started to cook. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. While I was cooking, the others arrived. The woman I had seen on the couch the day before. 2 small children who ran around screaming. Another younger man. They all sat at the table, waiting to be served. No one greeted me. No one thanked me. No one looked me in the eye. When I put the plates in front of them, one of the children made a face of disgust. "I don't like this," he said in his language. "I want something else." The mother stroked his head and looked at me with contempt. "Make something different for the boy," she ordered. Something he likes. Pancakes. With chocolate. I don't have any chocolate, I replied quietly. She clicked her tongue in annoyance. Then go buy some. What good are you if you can't even feed a child? I clenched my fists under the table. I took a deep breath. And I walked out of the kitchen without a word. I didn't go buy chocolate. I went back to my room and sat on the bed, shaking with rage and helplessness. That's how the first 3 days went. They treated me as if I were invisible, as if I were an underpaid employee in my own home. I cleaned up their messes. I cooked what they demanded. I listened to their complaints and their laughter while I hid in that dark back room. On the 4th day, Kevin finally showed up. My son arrived at noon with Jessica. They walked in the front door as if it were nothing, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. I heard their voices in the living room, greeting the relatives effusively. Laughter, hugs, celebrations. I gathered my courage and came out of my hiding place. Kevin was in the living room, surrounded by the strangers, drinking a beer and laughing. When he saw me, his smile froze for just a second. Then he carried on as if nothing had happened. "Mom," he said with an insulting lightness, "how are you? Are you adjusting well?" I approached him, feeling my legs tremble. "Kevin, I need to talk to you, alone." He looked at Jessica. She nodded, as if giving him permission, as if he needed her authorization to speak to his own mother. We walked to the kitchen. I closed the door behind us. "Kevin, this can't go on," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "These people treat me like an employee. They've kicked me out of my own bedroom. They're charging me $50,000 for something I never authorized. This is my house. The house your father and I bought. The house where we raised you." He sighed. That tired, annoyed sigh he used when he didn't want to deal with something. "Mom, don't exaggerate. It's only for 3 months. Jessica needed to help her family. They're foreigners, they have nowhere to go. You have plenty of space." "Plenty of space," I repeated, incredulous. "They have me sleeping in the storage room, in my own house." "It's temporary," he said, dismissing it with a wave of his hand. "Besides, Mom, let's be honest. This house is too big for you. You can't maintain it alone. Jessica and I have been paying for the repairs, the taxes, everything. You barely have any income. Your pension doesn't even cover half the expenses." "That's not true," I protested. "I pay my share. I always have." He shook his head. "Mom, we need to talk about something important. Jessica and I have been thinking. The best thing would be for you to transfer the house into our names. Legally. That way we can take care of everything without complications. And you can stay here, living without any worries. Like a guest. Like a guest. In the house that I bought. In the house where I buried my husband. In the house where I spent the best and worst moments of my life." I felt something explode inside me. "No," I said, with a firmness that surprised even me. "This house is mine, and I'm not signing anything." Kevin's expression changed. He was no longer the son I knew. He was a stranger with cold, calculating eyes, just like his wife. "Mom, don't be stubborn. This is going to happen one way or another. With your signature or without it. Jessica already spoke to a lawyer. There are legal ways to declare you incapable of managing your assets, especially at your age. A couple of medical evaluations, testimonies that you're not in a condition to make decisions. And that's it." "Are you threatening me?" I whispered, unable to believe it. "I'm being realistic," he said, unfazed. "You're going to have to accept it, Mom. Things have changed. You're not the owner here anymore. You're a burden. And burdens eventually have to be dropped." He turned his back on me and left the kitchen. I stood there, alone, feeling the tears roll down my cheeks. That night, while everyone was eating dinner and laughing in the dining room, I stayed in the storage room. I didn't eat. I couldn't. The lump in my throat was too big. But as I sat there in the darkness, something began to change inside me. The sadness was giving way to something stronger, more dangerous, fury, and an absolute determination that Kevin and Jessica were going to regret every word, every humiliation, every second they made me feel invisible, because they didn't know who they were messing with. I picked up my phone, I turned it on, and I started making calls. Calls I hadn't made in months. Calls that were going to change everything. First, I called my lawyer. Mr. Bennett, a man who knew all my secrets, all my assets, all the things Kevin and Jessica never imagined. Mr. Bennett, I said when he answered, I need to see you early tomorrow morning. It's urgent. And bring all the documents for the properties, the 4 plots of land, the investments, the bank accounts, everything. He was silent for a moment. Are you all right, Eleanor? He asked with genuine concern. No, I replied, my voice breaking. But I'm going to be. Tomorrow we start fixing this. I hung up and took a deep breath. They wanted to play dirty. They wanted to take everything from me. They wanted to erase me. But I had been keeping secrets for years. Years of protecting a fortune that not even my own son knew about. And now, it was time to use every card I had hidden. Because Eleanor Rivas was tired of being stepped on. And when a woman like me decides to fight back, the whole world trembles. The next morning, I left the house before dawn. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't ask for permission. I simply got dressed in the few clothes I had in that miserable room, grabbed my purse, and left through the back door like a thief in my own home. The cold morning air hit my face. I took a deep breath. For the first time in days, I felt like I could completely fill my lungs. I walked 3 blocks to the main avenue and hailed a cab. I gave the address of the law firm downtown, the tall glass building where Mr. Bennett had his office on the 12th floor. The entire ride, I kept my hands clenched in my lap. My heart was pounding. It wasn't fear. It was something different. It was the anticipation of someone who knows they are about to change the entire game. I arrived at the building at 7 in the morning. Mr. Bennett was already waiting for me in his office. He was a man in his 60s, elegant, with perfectly combed gray hair and impeccable suits. He had been my lawyer ever since my husband passed away 12 years ago. Eleanor, he said with a warm smile when I entered. But the smile faded when he saw my face. What happened? I sat down across from his desk and told him everything. Every detail. The invasion. The strangers. The absurd bill. The storage room. Kevin's threats. The intention to take my house. The hurtful words. Everything. He listened in silence, his brow furrowing more and more. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed deeply. Eleanor, this is serious. Very serious. What they are doing constitutes elder abuse, extortion, trespassing. There are multiple crimes here. I know, I replied, my voice firm. That's why I'm here. I need you to help me protect myself. And I need them to understand they made a huge mistake. Mr. Bennett opened one of his desk drawers and took out a thick folder. He placed it on the desk between us. Good. Then let's review exactly what Eleanor Rivas really owns. He opened the folder and began taking out documents, one after another, deeds, titles, bank statements, investment certificates. Property 1, he began. The house where you currently live, valued at $450,000, fully paid off, in your name only. I nodded. Property 2, the commercial lot in the Northern Industrial Zone, 3,000 square meters, valued at $600,000. Currently leased to a logistics company, generates a monthly income of $4,500. I kept nodding. Property 3, the apartment building in the Maplewood neighborhood, 6 units, valued at $800,000, 5 units rented. Approximate monthly income of $7,000. I felt a small smile begin to form on my lips. Property 4, the beachfront lot, 2 hectares, valued at $1,200,000, currently undeveloped but with approved building permits. Mr. Bennett paused and looked me directly in the eye. And then there are the investments. Government bonds for $300,000, mutual funds for $500,000, diversified stocks for another $200,000, and savings accounts for $150,000. He added it up mentally and said the figure I already knew, but had never said aloud. Eleanor, your total net worth is approximately $4 million. You are a very wealthy woman, and your son has no idea. He has no idea, I repeated softly, because I never told him. Because after his father died, I watched Kevin start to change. How he became ambitious, materialistic, how he chose Jessica precisely because she fed that ambition. I watched them start to spend more than they had, how they went into debt, how they always expected me to bail them out. Why did you never ask me to reveal this to him? Mr. Bennet asked with genuine curiosity. Because I wanted to see who my son really was. I wanted to know if he loved me for who I am or for what I have. I lived simply on purpose. With my modest pension, with my humble home, I wanted Kevin to see me as a mother who needed his support and his love, not as an inheritance to be collected. I paused, feeling my voice break. Now I have my answer. My son sees me as an obstacle, as something to be eliminated to get his hands on the little he thinks I have. Mr. Bennet closed the folder and steepled his hands on the desk. What do you want to do, Eleanor? I want to protect everything, I said with determination. I want to make sure that Kevin and Jessica can't touch a single cent of what belongs to me. I want to document every abuse, every threat, every crime they are committing. And when the right time comes, I want the truth to explode in their faces like a bomb. He smiled. A smile that knew the power of well-applied justice. Then we are going to do exactly that. First, I am going to draft documents that completely protect your assets. No fake medical evaluation will be able to touch them. Second, I'm hiring a private investigator to document everything that is happening in your house. Photographs, recordings, testimonies. Third, we are going to verify the immigration status of those foreign relatives. If they are here illegally or violating visa terms, that gives us another tool. I nodded, feeling hope return to my chest. How much time do you need to gather everything? I asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. We need to build a solid case. Irrefutable. In the meantime, you have to keep acting like the helpless victim. Let them believe they've won. Let them feel secure, because when someone feels secure, they make mistakes. And we'll be there to document every single one. We spent the next 3 hours going over every detail. I signed documents. I authorized investigations. I established security protocols for my bank accounts. Mr. Bennet gave me a new phone, one that nobody knew about, to communicate without risk of being tracked. When I left his office around noon, I felt transformed. I was no longer the scared, humiliated old woman. I was a woman with resources, with power, with a plan. I returned to the house in a cab. When I walked in the front door, everything was exactly as I had left it. Disorder, noise, cows. Marco was sprawled on the couch watching television. He saw me come in and didn't even greet me. "Where were you?" he asked accusatorily. "There was no breakfast made. The kids are hungry." "I had to go out," I replied softly, submissively. "A doctor's appointment." He snorted in contempt. "Next time, give a warning. We're not your servants to do your job." I bit my tongue. I nodded, and I walked to the kitchen to prepare the lunch they were demanding. But as I chopped vegetables and cooked rice, a small smile played on my lips. They didn't know that every insult, every humiliation, every abuse was being documented, that the private investigator was already on his way, that the hidden cameras were going to be installed that very night while they all slept, that Eleanor Rivas was no longer alone and defenseless, that the woman they were trampling on was actually the owner of an empire they couldn't even imagine, and that very soon, they were going to pay for every second of pain they caused me. I kept cooking. I kept cleaning. I kept being invisible. But inside, I was preparing the most devastating storm Kevin and Jessica had ever seen. And when that storm finally hit, there would be nowhere to hide. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. Every morning I woke up in that dark, damp room feeling my body ache. The old bed was destroying my back. But I didn't complain. I couldn't. I had to maintain the act. I got up early, before everyone else, and prepared breakfast. I cleaned the disasters they left behind. I washed mountains of dirty laundry. I cooked what they demanded. I endured their insults and their contempt with my head bowed and my fists clenched. But every night, when everyone was asleep, I sat in that room with the phone Mr. Bennet had given me and reviewed the reports he sent. The private investigator was doing an exceptional job. Photographs of the foreign relatives using my house as if it were a hotel. Videos of Marco yelling at me for not cooking fast enough. Audio recordings of Jessica on the phone with her friends, laughing at me, calling me a useless old woman, saying that soon the house would be hers and she would throw me in a cheap nursing home. Each piece of evidence was another nail in their coffin. Mr. Bennett had also discovered something crucial. Jessica's 5 relatives were in the country on tourist visas. Visas that did not allow them to stay for more than 90 days or establish permanent residence anywhere. And they had already been here for almost 2 months. All in my house. All without paying rent. All violating the terms of their entry into the country. That gave us power. A lot of power. But what really changed everything was what we discovered one night. I was in the kitchen washing dishes around 11 o'clock at night. Everyone had gone to bed. Or so I thought. I heard voices coming from the study. The room where my late husband used to work. Where I kept important documents in a locked filing cabinet, I approached silently. The door was ajar. Inside were Kevin and Jessica. And Marco. The 3 of them were going through my papers. My private documents. They had forced the lock on the filing cabinet and were pulling out folders, reading everything, looking for something. There has to be something else, Jessica said in frustration. A woman who lived here for 40 years has to have savings, properties, something of value. I only found the deed to this house, Kevin replied, holding a document. It's in her name, but with the medical evaluations we're preparing, we can declare her unfit to manage her affairs. A judge will grant us legal guardianship. Marco smiled wickedly. And when that happens, the house is ours. We sell it, split the money, and send the old woman to a cheap nursing home. Problem solved. The 3 of them laughed. I felt my blood boil. But I didn't go in. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. Instead, I took out the phone hidden in my apron pocket, the new phone, and I recorded them. I recorded every word, every laugh, every evil plan. When they finished and left the study, I was already back in the kitchen, washing dishes as if nothing had happened. That same night, I sent the audio to Mr. Bennett. His reply came within 5 minutes. Eleanor, this is pure gold. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Invasion of privacy. Theft of documents. With this, we can destroy them legally. Are you ready for us to act? I replied with shaking hands. Not yet. I want them to sink deeper. I want every person around us to see who they really are. I need 2 more weeks. Because I didn't just want legal justice. I wanted social justice. I wanted my neighbors, my acquaintances, the people who had seen me my whole life to know exactly what kind of people Kevin and Jessica were. The following days were even worse. One afternoon, while I was cleaning the living room, the next-door neighbor arrived, Mrs. Barbara, a woman my age who had been my friend for years. Eleanor, she said, seeing me with a rag in my hand and dirty clothes. What's going on here? I've seen a lot of strange people coming in and out of your house. Before I could answer, Jessica appeared. Oh, Mrs. Barbara, she said with a perfect fake smile. So good to see you. Yes, we have visitors. My family from abroad. They're staying with us for a while. Eleanor is happy to help. Right, Eleanor? She looked at me with threatening eyes. Yes, I whispered. Very happy. Barbara looked at me with concern, but Jessica quickly ushered her to the door. We're a bit busy right now, Mrs. Barbara. But thank you for caring. Eleanor is in very good hands. Ours. She closed the door and turned to me with an icy stare. If you ever talk to the neighbors again about what's happening here, you will regret it. Do you understand? This is my house now, and you are just a guest who can be kicked out at any moment. I nodded with my head down, but in my pocket, my hand gripped the phone that had recorded every word. The last straw came a week later. It was Sunday afternoon. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner for everyone. As always, like the servant they had turned me into, Kevin arrived with Jessica. They had papers in their hands and serious expressions. Mom, Kevin said, sitting at the kitchen table, we need you to sign these documents. What documents? I asked, wiping my hands on my apron. Jessica put the papers in front of me. They're documents that transfer ownership of this house to Kevin's in my name. There's also a power of attorney that allows us to manage any other assets you have. Bank accounts, savings, whatever. I looked at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. And why would I do that? Kevin sighed impatiently. Because you can't take care of yourself anymore, Mom. Because you're old. Because you need someone to take charge of your affairs. This is for your own good. I am not signing anything, I said, my voice trembling but firm. Jessica's expression hardened. We're not asking for permission, Eleanor. We have medical appointments scheduled for you next week. Psychological and cognitive evaluations. The doctors are going to certify that you're not in a condition to make decisions, and a judge is going to give us legal guardianship, whether you like it or not. Kevin avoided my gaze. My own son couldn't even look me in the eye while he was threatening me. This is theft, I whispered. This is abuse. This is family, Jessica corrected coldly. And in families, the strong protect the weak, even if the weak don't understand it. They stood up and left the papers on the table. You have until Friday to sign voluntarily, Kevin finally said. After that, we'll do it by force. They left the kitchen, leaving me alone with those fraudulent documents in front of me. I sat there for long minutes. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of absolute fury. I took the documents. I photographed them with the phone, and I sent them to Mr. Bennett with a simple message. It's time. Enough is enough. I want us to act now. His reply came immediately. Understood. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning. We're coming to your house with everything. Authorities, lawyers, immigration officers, get ready. This is going to be big. That night I couldn't sleep, not from fear, but from anticipation of what was to come. Tomorrow was the day Eleanor Rivas stopped being the victim and became the nightmare of those who tried to destroy her. That last night in the storage room, I didn't close my eyes for a second. I sat on the edge of the old bed, staring at the cracked wall, listening to the noises of the house, the snores, the footsteps, the creaking of the floorboards. Every sound reminded me of what they had done to me, what they had taken from me, the humiliation I had endured for weeks. But it also filled me with a strange energy, a cold, calculated determination. Tomorrow, everything was going to change. At 5 in the morning, I got up. I showered with cold water in that miserable bathroom. I dressed in the best clothes I had stored in that room, a simple but elegant gray dress. I combed my hair carefully. I put on a little makeup. I wanted to look dignified, strong, like the woman I really was. At 6, I left the room and prepared breakfast as always. Eggs, toast, coffee, cut fruit. I put everything on the dining room table with trembling hands. Little by little, they all came down. Marco with a sleepy face. The middle-aged woman yawning. The children running and screaming. The young man dragging his feet. They sat at the table without a greeting. Without a thank you, they began to eat like hungry animals. I stood by the kitchen doorway, watching them, memorizing every face, every gesture of contempt, every smirk of superiority. At 8, Kevin and Jessica arrived. They came in the front door with keys I had never given them. Keys they had made without my permission. Jessica was wearing high heels and an expensive dress. Kevin was wearing a suit, as if they were going to an important meeting. "Good morning, family," Jessica said with false cheer. "Did everyone have a good breakfast?" The relatives nodded with their mouths full. Jessica then looked at me. That look she had been giving me for weeks. That look that clearly said I was worthless. "Eleanor, did you bring the documents we asked you to sign?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her in silence. Her expression hardened. "Eleanor, I asked you a question. Did you bring the documents?" "I am not signing anything," I finally said, my voice calm. Silence fell over the dining room. Everyone stopped eating. Everyone looked at me. Kevin got up from the table. "Mom, don't start. We already explained that this is going to happen anyway. You can make this easy, or you can make it hard. You decide." "I've already decided," I replied, "and my decision is no." Jessica let out a dry, humorless laugh. How pathetic. Look at the old woman getting brave. As if she has any power here. As if she could do anything to stop us. She walked toward me with slow, menacing steps. "Listen to me carefully, Eleanor. Today at 11, we have an appointment with the lawyer. You are coming with us." You are going to sign those papers, and if you don't do it voluntarily, we will use the medical reports we've already prepared. We'll prove you're ill, that you can't take care of yourself, that you're a danger to yourself, and a judge will give us total control over your life." She got so close I could feel her breath on my face. "And after that, we're going to put you in the cheapest nursing home we can find. A place where no one will visit you, where no one will remember you, where you'll die alone and forgotten. Because that's what you deserve." The others at the table laughed. Marco clapped. Kevin stared at the floor, cowardly as always. I took a deep breath. I looked at the clock on the wall. 9:30. 30 more minutes. I just needed to hold on for 30 more minutes. "All right," I said softly. "I'll go with you. I'll do what you ask." Jessica smiled triumphantly. "That's more like it. I knew you'd eventually understand your place." She turned to go back to the table. But just at that moment, the doorbell rang. We all froze. "Who is it?" Kevin asked, frowning. "I don't know," Jessica replied. "Eleanor, go open the door." I walked to the door, my heart beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. My hands were shaking as I turned the knob. I opened the door, and there was Mr. Bennett, my lawyer, dressed in an impeccable suit, briefcase in hand, a professional smile on his face. But he wasn't alone. Behind him were 4 other people. 2 uniformed police officers, a man in a suit holding an ID from the immigration department, and a woman with credentials from social services. "Good morning, Mrs. Rivas," Mr. Bennett said, his voice loud and clear. "I apologize for the hour, but we have urgent business to attend to." He walked in without waiting for an invitation. The others followed him. Kevin and Jessica had stood up. The foreign relatives stared with wide, frightened eyes. "What is the meaning of this?" Jessica demanded. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" Mr. Bennett turned to her with a cold smile. "Correction. This is not your house. This is the house of Eleanor Rivas. And we are here because multiple crimes have been committed on this property." He opened his briefcase and began taking out documents. Crime number 1. Trespassing. 5 individuals have been living here without the consent of the legal owner. Crime number 2. Extortion. Mrs. Rivas was presented with a fraudulent invoice for $50,000. Crime number 3. Attempted fraud. Fraudulent documents were prepared to transfer property under false pretenses. Crime number 4. Elder abuse. Mrs. Rivas has been subjected to physical, emotional, and financial mistreatment. Every word was like a bomb dropping in the dining room. Kevin was pale. Jessica had lost all her arrogance. The foreign relatives began talking among themselves in their language, scared. The immigration officer stepped forward. And crime number 5. Violation of visa terms. The 5 individuals identified as Marco Mendez, Luisa Torres, Jose Ramirez, Catalina Vega, and Juan Suarez are in the country on tourist visas that do not permit them to establish residence or remain for more than 90 days. All of you have exceeded that time. He pulled out official documents. You have 1 hour to gather your belongings. Afterward, you will be escorted to an immigration office where your immediate deportation will be processed. Marco stood up, furious. "This is unfair. Jessica told us we could stay. She promised us this house was hers." Mr. Bennett smiled. "Ah, perfect. Thank you for confirming that you were deceived by Mrs. Jessica. That adds another charge. Conspiracy to commit immigration fraud." He turned to Jessica. "Everything she told you was a lie. This house was never hers. It never will be. And now she will face legal consequences for every lie she told." Jessica turned to me, pure hatred in her eyes. "You," she screamed, pointing at me. "You did this. You damned old woman." She tried to walk toward me, but one of the police officers stopped her. "Do not approach Mrs. Rivas," he warned in a firm voice. "You already have enough charges. Don't add assault to the list." Kevin finally found his voice. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "Mom, please. There must be a mistake. We just wanted to help. We just wanted what was best for you." I looked at him, my son, the child I had raised, the man he had become, and I felt absolutely nothing. "Help," I repeated slowly. You wanted to help by taking my house. You wanted what was best for me by putting me in a nursing home. You wanted to protect me by stealing my documents and planning to declare me incompetent. Mr. Bennett took out a small device and pressed a button. Kevin's voice began to play. The recording I had made that night. We sell it. We split the money and send the old woman to a cheap nursing home. Problem solved. His own words, his own voice, his own conviction. Kevin fell to his knees. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. Jessica convinced me. I didn't want this. I really didn't. But it was too late for regrets. Mr. Bennett clapped his hands. All right. The officers will supervise these 5 individuals as they gather their things and exit the property immediately. Mr. Kevin Rivas and Mrs. Jessica Rivas are forbidden from approaching Mrs. Eleanor Rivas until the legal proceedings are resolved. Is that clear? Everyone nodded in silence. And just like that, as the morning sun streamed through the windows of my house, I watched my life begin to take shape again. But this was only the beginning, because the most important part was still to come. The revelation that would destroy everything they thought they knew about me. The next 30 minutes were chaotic. The 5 foreign relatives ran up the stairs to the bedrooms, pushing each other, shouting in their language. The sound of suitcases being dragged, drawers being yanked open, things falling to the floor filled the entire house. The 2 police officers supervised from downstairs, making sure they didn't take anything that didn't belong to them. Jessica sat on the couch with her arms crossed, glaring at me. Kevin remained standing by the window, looking outside, unable to meet my eyes. Mr. Bennett reviewed documents at the dining room table. The woman from social services took photographs of every room, documenting the state of the house, the conditions they had forced me to live in. I stood in the middle of the living room, watching it all as if in a dream. After weeks of humiliation, of forced silence, of making myself invisible, I was finally taking back what was mine. Marco came down first, dragging 2 enormous suitcases. He passed by me without looking, but I managed to hear what he muttered under his breath. Damned witch! You tricked us. You made us think you had nothing. I smiled slightly. He still didn't know the half of it. One by one, they came down. Luisa with her crying children. Jose carrying bags full of clothes. Catalina with her makeup smeared, muttering insults. Juan, the youngest, looking scared at the officers. In less than an hour, the 5 people who had invaded my home were standing in the entryway with all their belongings. The immigration officer handed them papers. These are your notification documents. You must report to the immigration office tomorrow at 9 in the morning. Failure to comply with this order will result in an immediate warrant for your arrest. Understood? They all nodded silently, defeated. The officers escorted them outside. I watched through the window as they got into 2 waiting cabs. As they drove away down the street, as they disappeared from my life forever. When the door closed behind them, a heavy silence fell over the house. Only Mr. Bennett, the woman from social services, Jessica, Kevin, and I remained. Mr. Bennett closed his briefcase and turned to Kevin and Jessica. Now, let's talk about you 2. Kevin took a step forward, his hands raised in a gesture of supplication. Please, listen to me. I know we made mistakes. I know things got out of control. But I'm her son. I'm the only family she has. She can't do this. She can't destroy our relationship over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I repeated, feeling the rage rise in my throat again. You call forcing me to sleep in a storage room a misunderstanding? Kicking me out of my bedroom? Treating me like an employee in my own house? Planning to steal everything I own? That was Jessica's idea, he said, pointing at his wife. She convinced me. She told me it was the right thing to do. I just wanted to help. I just wanted to make sure you were well taken care of. Jessica shot up from her seat. Don't you dare blame me, she screamed. You agreed to everything. You signed the papers. You found the doctors for the fake evaluations. Don't you dare play the victim now. Ah, perfect, Mr. Bennett said, pulling out a small recorder. Thank you for confirming that you both actively participated in the attempted fraud. This makes the legal process much easier. Jessica turned pale as she realized what she had just admitted. Mr. Bennett continued in a cold, professional voice. Kevin Rivas, Jessica Rivas, you are being officially notified of multiple charges: attempted fraud, extortion, elder abuse, falsification of medical documents, theft of private property. You will receive legal summons in the coming days. I strongly advise you to hire a good lawyer. You're going to need one. He paused and looked at them directly. And you are forbidden from approaching Mrs. Eleanor Rivas, calling her, contacting her in any way, or attempting to enter this property. If you violate this order, you will be arrested immediately. Kevin looked at me, his eyes full of tears. Mom, please, forgive me. I didn't want it to come to this. Please, tell me what I can do to fix it. Anything. I'll do anything. I looked at him in silence for long seconds. This man begging for my forgiveness. This man crying and kneeling. He was the same one who had planned to declare me incompetent. The same one who had let his wife humiliate me. The same one who had said he would throw me in a cheap nursing home where I would die alone and forgotten. There is nothing you can do, I finally said, my voice calm but firm. You broke something that can't be repaired. You killed the love I had for you. And there's no fixing that. Mom, don't say that. Please. I'm your son. Your only son. You were my son, I corrected him. But the Kevin I knew died a long time ago. The man standing in front of me is a stranger who only sees me as money. Jessica finally exploded. All of this for a damned house, she screamed furiously. An old, ugly house that isn't even worth that much. I don't know why we're humiliating ourselves for this. It's not worth it. Mr. Bennett smiled. It was a smile that knew the power of well-chosen words. Ah, Mrs. Jessica, that is precisely your mistake. You assumed Eleanor only had this house, that she was a poor old woman living on a miserable pension, that she was worthless. He took another folder from his briefcase. Allow me to correct that impression. He opened the folder on the table and began taking out documents, one after another. This house, indeed, is worth $450,000. But Eleanor also owns a commercial lot in the industrial zone valued at $600,000, an apartment building in Maplewood valued at $800,000, a beachfront lot valued at $1,200,000. With every figure he mentioned, Kevin and Jessica's eyes grew wider and wider. Furthermore, she has diversified investments, government bonds, mutual funds, stocks, savings accounts, all totaling approximately $1 million additional dollars. He paused dramatically. Eleanor Rivas's total net worth amounts to $4 million. She is a very, very wealthy woman. And you had no idea. The silence that followed was absolute. Kevin stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. His mouth was open. His face had lost all its color. $4 million, he whispered. $4 million. Jessica shook her head, incredulous. No, it's not possible. You lived like a pauper. Your old clothes. Your unrenovated house. Your miserable pension. It was all an act. It wasn't an act, I replied calmly. It was a choice to live simply. It was preferring to invest my money wisely instead of wasting it on appearances. It was protecting what my husband and I built over years of hard work. I looked Kevin directly in the eye, and it was a test. A test to see if my own son loved me for who I am or for what I have. A test you failed. Miserably. But, Mom, Kevin stammered, if you had said something, if you had told us, we never would have. Never would have what? I interrupted. Never would have treated me like dirt? Never would have tried to rob me if you knew I had more money? Is that what you're saying? That you only respect me if I'm rich? He couldn't answer, because he knew that anything he said would only sink him deeper. Mr. Bennett put the documents away. I believe everything is clear here. Kevin, Jessica, please remove yourselves from this property now. The legal summons will arrive soon. I suggest you use that time to reflect on your decisions. Kevin took a step toward me, his hands outstretched. Mom, please, tell me there's a way to fix this. Tell me I can earn back your trust. Anything. I'll change. I'll be better. I promise you. I looked at him and felt something shatter inside me, because a part of me, a small, foolish part, still wanted to believe him. Still wanted to think my son could change. But Mr. Bennet put a hand on my shoulder. Eleanor, remember everything they did to you. Remember every humiliation, every insult, every evil plan. People don't change overnight. And they certainly don't when they're still looking for excuses instead of accepting responsibility. He was right. Of course he was right. Get out of my house, I said finally, and never come back. Kevin and Jessica walked to the door in silence, defeated, destroyed, aware that they had lost much more than a house. They had lost a fortune they never even knew existed. And more importantly, they had lost the only person who had ever truly loved them unconditionally. The door closed behind them. And finally, after weeks of nightmare, I was alone in my house. My house. When the door closed behind Kevin and Jessica, I stood in the middle of the living room without moving. The silence was deafening. After weeks of constant noise, of strange voices, of cruel laughter, of footsteps invading every corner of my home, there was finally silence. Peace. Emptiness. Mr. Bennet approached me with a concerned expression. Eleanor, are you all right? I didn't answer right away. My eyes scanned the room, the disordered furniture, the stains on the couch, the marks on the walls, the traces of the invasion I had suffered, but I also saw my home, my space, my recovered refuge. I'm all right, I finally said, my voice trembling. For the first time in weeks, I'm all right. The woman from social services finished taking her photographs and approached us. Mrs. Rivas, I've documented everything. The conditions of the room where they forced you to sleep, the general state of the house, the damage to the property. All of this will serve as additional evidence in the legal proceedings. I thanked her with a nod. Mr. Bennet opened his briefcase again and took out more documents. Now we need to talk about the next steps. The legal proceedings against Kevin and Jessica are going to take time. Months. Probably. In the meantime, I have temporary restraining orders that prevent them from approaching you or this property. He placed the papers on the table. I've also hired a security service. They will install cameras on the exterior of the house and an alarm system tomorrow, just in case. Do you think they would try to come back? I asked. He sighed. Desperate people do desperate things. Jessica just found out she lost access to $4 million. And Kevin realized he destroyed his relationship with his mother over greed. I don't know how they will react. It's better to be safe. He was right. Of course, he was right. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing documents. I signed papers. I authorized legal actions. I confirmed testimonies. Mr. Bennet explained every step of the process with infinite patience. When they finally left, it was mid-afternoon. I was alone in my house for the first time in weeks. I walked slowly through each room. The dining room where I had been humiliated. The kitchen where I had been treated like a servant. The stairs I had climbed carrying suitcases that weren't mine. The bedrooms that had been taken from me. I reached the master bedroom. My bedroom. The one I had shared with my husband for so many years. The one Jessica had occupied with her foreign family. The bed was unmade. Clothes were thrown on the floor. Empty bottles on the dresser. The mirror had makeup stains. It smelled of cheap perfume and sweat. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let the tears fall. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release. Of relief. Of rage held in for too long that finally found an outlet. I cried for my son's betrayal. For the years I had dedicated to raising him only for him to see me as an ATM. For the humiliations I had endured in silence. For the woman they had almost turned me into. But I also cried with gratitude, because I had survived, because I had been strong enough to defend myself, because I had not let myself be destroyed. When the tears finally dried, I stood up and began to clean. I stripped the sheets from the bed and stuffed them into trash bags. I didn't want them. I didn't want anything they had touched. I opened the windows wide to let in the fresh air. I sprayed disinfectant on every surface. I cleaned the mirror. I gathered all the trash they had left behind. I worked for hours, until my arms and back ached, until the bedroom smelled like my bedroom again, until I could recognize it as my space again. When I finished, it was night. I was exhausted but satisfied. I took a long bath in the master bathroom tub. Hot water, bath salts, lit candles, all the little luxuries I hadn't allowed myself for weeks. I put on my favorite nightgown, the one that had been stored in a box in the storage room. I got into my bed with clean sheets that smelled like lavender, and for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. No strange noise, no fear, no humiliation. I slept in my house, in my bed, as the owner I had always been. The following days were strange. I woke up early as always, but there was no one to cook for. There were no messes to clean, no insults to endure. There was only silence, and space, and freedom. Little by little, I got my routine back. I made my own breakfast without rushing. I drank coffee in the garden watching the sunrise. I read the books I hadn't been able to read. I listened to music at a moderate volume. I tended to the plants that had been trampled. The house began to feel like home again. But the legal process continued. Mr. Bennett called me every other day with updates. Kevin and Jessica had hired a lawyer. They were trying to negotiate. They want to reach an out-of-court settlement to avoid criminal charges. No, I told him every time he suggested considering it. I want them to face the full consequences of what they did. No settlement is possible. A week after the eviction, I received a letter. It was from Kevin, handwritten, 5 pages of apologies, of pleas, of promises to change. I read every word, feeling absolutely nothing, because words on paper didn't erase what he had done. Empty promises didn't heal the betrayal. Late apologies didn't bring back the shattered trust. I put the letter in a drawer and didn't reply. 2 weeks later, my neighbor Barbara came to visit. She knocked on the door gently. When I opened it, she looked at me with eyes full of tears. "Eleanor," she said, hugging me, "I heard what happened. The whole neighborhood is talking about it. I can't believe Kevin and that woman did that to you. I invited her in. I made coffee. We sat in the living room, the same room where I had been humiliated so many times. I told her everything, every detail. She listened with expressions of horror and rage. I always knew Jessica was a snake," she finally said. "But I never thought Kevin would stoop so low. He was such a good kid. What happened to him?" "He married the wrong person," I replied, "and he let ambition corrupt him. He stopped seeing his mother as a person and started seeing me as an obstacle to his wealth." Barbara took my hand in hers. "You are the strongest woman I know. What you did? Standing up for yourself like that, gathering evidence, facing them legally, that takes a courage few people have." I smiled sadly. I didn't feel strong while it was happening. I felt small, scared, invisible. But I guess real strength isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing the right thing even when you are. She nodded wisely. "And what will you do now?" That was the question. Right? What does a 68-year-old woman do after reclaiming her life from the clutches of those who tried to destroy it? "I'm going to live," I said finally. "I'm going to enjoy every day I have left. I'm going to use my money for things that matter. I'm going to help people who are going through the same thing I went through. I'm going to make sure my story serves a purpose beyond just my own justice." Barbara's eyes lit up. "That sounds wonderful, Eleanor." When she left that afternoon, I kept thinking about her words, about what I really wanted to do with the rest of my life, and then I had an idea that had been forming in my mind for days, but finally crystallized into something concrete. I called Mr. Bennett. "I need your help with something," I said. "I want to create a foundation, a non-profit organization that helps elderly people who are being abused by their families. I want to donate part of my estate to it. I want to make sure no other Eleanor Rivas is left alone and without resources when her own family betrays her." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard the smile in his voice. "Eleanor Rivas, you are an extraordinary woman. We are going to make that happen." And so, while Kevin and Jessica faced the legal consequences of their cruelty, I was building something beautiful from the ashes of my pain. I was turning my suffering into purpose, my humiliation into help for others, my betrayal into protection for the vulnerable. Because that's what strong women do. They don't just survive, they transform. 1 month after the eviction, I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was nighttime. I was in the living room reading a book when the phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something told me I should. Hello? Mom. It was Kevin. His voice sounded broken, desperate. I didn't hang up, even though I should have. But a part of me, that maternal part that never fully dies, needed to hear what he had to say. You shouldn't be calling me, I said, my voice cold. You have a restraining order. I know, but I needed to talk to you. Please just hear me out for 5 minutes. I remained silent. That was enough permission for him to continue. Everything is falling apart. Mom. Jessica left me. She's gone. She said she wasn't going to stay with a loser who couldn't even steal a house from his own mother. She took everything of value we had and disappeared. I don't know where she is. He paused. I heard his breath hitch. I lost my job. The company found out about the legal charges against me. Elder abuse. Attempted fraud. They said they couldn't keep someone with that record. They fired me 2 weeks ago. Another longer pause. I have no money. Mom. Jessica emptied the bank accounts before she left. I'm living in a cheap motel. I can't pay the rent on our apartment. The owners are going to evict me. I have nowhere to go. I have nothing. His voice broke completely. And the worst part is, I deserve it. I deserve every second of this. Because I was the worst son in the world. I betrayed the only person who ever loved me unconditionally. And now I'm paying for it. I heard sobbing on the other end of the line. I'm not calling to ask you for money. I'm not calling to ask you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve either of those things. I just wanted you to know that you were right, that I became a monster, and that I would give anything to go back in time and be the son you deserved. He fell silent, waiting for my response. I felt so many things at once. Pain, anger, sadness, and yes, a small part of satisfaction in knowing he was facing real consequences. But I also felt something else. Something I didn't expect. Pity, not pity for him, but pity for the relationship we had lost. For the son he could have been and never was. For the years wasted on ambition and greed when we could have had love and family. Kevin, I said finally, I appreciate you calling. I appreciate that you recognize what you did, but that doesn't change anything. You still broke my trust. You still humiliated me in my own home. You still plan to steal everything I have. I know, he whispered. And even though you're suffering now, even though you're paying the consequences, that doesn't mean I have to rescue you. All your life, I rescued you. I gave you everything. I protected you from your own mistakes, and that only turned you into someone who expected I always would. My voice grew firmer. It's time for you to learn to save yourself. It's time for you to face your life without expecting me to solve your problems. Because if I rescue you now, you will learn nothing. And you will do the same thing again as soon as you get the chance. Mom, please. No, Kevin. The answer is no. You are going to have to find your own way. You are going to have to rebuild your life on your own. And maybe, just maybe, if you prove over years that you have truly changed, if you prove to me with actions and not just words that you've become a different person, then we can talk about rebuilding some kind of relationship. I paused. But that will take years. Not months. Not weeks. Years of real change. And until then, don't call me again. Don't try to contact me. Don't show up at my house. Respect the restraining order and let us each rebuild our lives separately. There was a long silence. I love you, Mom, he finally said, his voice broken. I know I have no right to say it after everything I've done, but it's true, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He hung up before I could reply. I sat there with the phone in my hand for long minutes. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time, they weren't tears of rage or pain. They were tears of closure, of acceptance, of letting go of something that needed to be let go. Because loving someone doesn't mean you let them destroy you. And being a mother doesn't mean sacrificing yourself into non-existence. Sometimes the greatest love is saying no. It's setting boundaries. It's allowing people to face the consequences of their actions so they can grow. In the following days, I moved forward with my plans. Mr. Bennett and I met with accountants, nonprofit lawyers, and social workers. We designed the entire structure of the foundation I wanted to create. It would be called the Eleanor Foundation, a simple but powerful name. Its mission would be threefold. First, to provide free legal counsel to elderly individuals who were being abused by their families. Second, to offer temporary shelter for those who needed to escape dangerous situations. Third, to educate the community about the rights of seniors and how to recognize signs of abuse. I donated $500,000 as seed money. It was a significant amount, but I knew it could make a real difference in the lives of many people. We hired an executive director, a brilliant woman named Catalina, who had worked for years in social services and understood the problems we wanted to tackle deeply. We rented a small but dignified office downtown. We hired 2 lawyers, 3 social workers, a receptionist, an accountant. The Eleanor Foundation opened its doors 3 months after my own nightmare. On opening day, we invited the media, journalists, community leaders, government officials. I gave a speech in front of all of them. I told my story without shame, without hiding details, because I knew my vulnerability could be strength for others. I stood in front of that group of strangers and said the words I had been holding on to for months. My name is Eleanor Rivas. I am 68 years old, and I was a victim of abuse by my own son and daughter-in-law. They stripped me of my dignity. They treated me like trash. They tried to steal everything I had. I saw tears in the eyes of some people in the audience. But I survived. And I didn't just survive, I thrived. I reclaimed my life. I defended my rights. And now I am using my experience and my resources to help others who are going through the same thing. My voice grew steady. Because elder abuse is a silent epidemic. It happens behind closed doors. It happens in families that look normal from the outside. It happens when ambition and greed overtake love and respect. I looked directly at the cameras. If you are being abused by your family, I want you to know that you are not alone, that you have rights, that you deserve dignity and respect, no matter your age, and that there is help available. The Eleanor Foundation is here for you. The applause that followed was deafening. After the speech, people approached me, some crying, some sharing their own stories, some simply wanting to thank me for having the courage to speak out. One woman in particular stuck in my memory. She was in her 70s. Hunched over, with sad but determined eyes. "My daughter is trying to declare me incompetent," she told me in a low voice. "She wants to take my house. She says I can't take care of myself, but I'm perfectly fine. She just wants to sell my property and keep the money." I took her hands in mine. "Come to our office tomorrow," I said. "We are going to help you. We are going to make sure that what almost happened to me doesn't happen to you." She cried with relief. And I knew in that moment that every second of pain I had endured was worth it, because that pain had been transformed into purpose, into help, into hope for others. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The Eleanor Foundation began taking cases, dozens of them. Elderly people being financially, emotionally, and physically abused by their own families. Stories that were heartbreaking, but also ignited a determination to fight. We won our first legal case. A 75-year-old woman whose son had forged her signature to transfer her house to himself. We recovered the property. The son faced criminal charges. Then we won another, and another, and another. The foundation began to grow. More donations came in from people who heard about our mission. More volunteers offered their time. More lawyers wanted to work pro bono on our cases. And I, Eleanor Rivas, became something I never imagined. A voice, an advocate, a symbol of resistance against abuse. But more importantly, I became the woman I was always meant to be. Strong, independent, unbreakable. I was no longer the victim. I was the survivor. And I was using my survival to change the world, one senior at a time. 6 months after founding the organization, I received an unexpected invitation. A national television network wanted to do a special report on the Eleanor Foundation and my story. They wanted to show how one elderly woman had turned her trauma into a movement that was helping hundreds. I accepted without hesitation, because I knew the more people who heard my story, the more people would find the courage to defend their own rights. On the day of the filming, a full crew arrived at my house. Cameras, lights, microphones. They turned my living room into a television set. The journalist was a young woman, maybe 30, but with a maturity in her eyes that made me feel comfortable immediately. "Mrs. Rivas," she began, as the cameras started rolling, "your story has inspired thousands. But I'd like you to tell us, in your own words, what was the hardest part of everything you went through?" I thought carefully before answering. The hardest part wasn't the physical humiliation. It wasn't sleeping in that miserable room or being treated like a servant. The hardest part was realizing that my own son, the boy I had raised with all my love, saw me as an obstacle, as something to be eliminated. That broke something in me that I am still healing. She nodded with understanding. "And what would you say to other seniors who are going through similar situations?" I looked directly into the camera. I would tell them that their life has value, that their dignity is non-negotiable, that no matter how old they are, they deserve respect, and that it is never, ever too late to fight back. I was 68 years old when I decided to fight, and I won. You can win too. The interview lasted for nearly 2 hours. I told every detail of my story. I showed photographs of the room where they forced me to sleep. I showed the fake $50,000 invoice. I showed the legal documents proving the attempted fraud. And at the end, I showed what I had built from those ashes. The foundation, the cases won, the lives changed. The report aired a week later during prime time, and it exploded. My phone didn't stop ringing for days. Calls from people asking for help, calls from media outlets wanting more interviews, calls from donors offering financial support. The Eleanor Foundation became a national movement. We opened offices in 3 more cities. We hired more staff. We expanded our services to include support groups, psychological therapy, and financial education for seniors. In 1 year, we had helped over 500 people. We recovered stolen properties. We stopped fraud. We saved lives. And I found myself in a place I never expected, traveling the country, giving speeches, being interviewed by major magazines, receiving awards from organizations dedicated to senior rights. But the most important thing happened on an ordinary afternoon at the Foundation's office. I was reviewing new cases when Catalina, our director, came in with a huge smile. "Eleanor, you have to see this." She showed me her computer. It was an email from a 72-year-old woman. The message simply read, "I saw your story on television." It gave me the courage to report my son who was stealing my pension every month. Thanks to the Eleanor Foundation, I got my money back and my independence. "You saved my life. You literally saved my life." I read those words, and tears began to roll down my cheeks. Because that was the purpose. That was the reason I had endured it all, so that no other Eleanor Rivas would have to suffer in silence, so that seniors would know they had power, a voice, and rights. The following months brought more changes. The legal case against Kevin and Jessica finally went to trial. Mr. Bennett kept me informed of every step, but I chose not to attend the hearings. I didn't need to see them. I didn't need that closure. I had already found my peace in other ways. Jessica was found guilty of multiple charges: fraud, extortion, elder abuse. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay a fine of $150,000. Kevin received a lighter sentence for cooperating with the authorities: 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and a $50,000 fine. When Mr. Bennett gave me the news, I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel vengeance. I just felt an emptiness where my son used to be. But that emptiness was slowly being filled with other things. With purpose. With the people I was helping. With the family I had chosen, instead of the family that had betrayed me. A year after it all, on the anniversary of the foundation, I organized a special event. I invited all the people we had helped. Over 300 people filled the hall we had rented, seniors who had gotten their homes back, who had escaped abuse, who had found justice. I stood in front of them all and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pure joy. A year ago, I began. I was a broken woman, humiliated, betrayed by the people I loved most. I felt invisible, worthless, powerless. I looked at the faces in front of me, faces that reflected stories similar to my own. But I learned something fundamental. I learned that pain can be transformative, that suffering can be turned into strength, that our deepest wounds can be the seeds of our greatest purpose. My voice grew stronger. Every single one of you in this room is living proof that it is never too late to fight back. That age does not make us weak, it makes us wise. That we deserve respect, dignity, and love no matter how many years we have. The applause filled the room. After the event, as I was gathering my things, I saw a familiar figure standing in the doorway. It was Kevin. He looked different. Thinner. Older. He was wearing simple clothes. The arrogance that had characterized him was gone. His eyes were filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Genuine humility. "Mom," he said softly, "I know I shouldn't be here. I know it's not time yet. But I needed to see you. I needed to tell you something." I approached him but kept my distance. "I've spent this past year working on myself," he continued. "Therapy, support groups, community service in nursing homes and senior centers, listening to stories like yours, seeing what abuse does to families." His voice broke. "And I finally understand what I did. I didn't just hurt you. I hurt myself. I lost the most important person in my life because of stupid greed. And there isn't a day that I don't regret it." He paused. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I'm here to tell you that I'm proud of you, of what you've built, of how you took your pain and turned it into something beautiful that is helping so many people. You are the strongest woman I know, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." I looked at him for long seconds. This man who had been my son, who had caused so much pain, but who now, perhaps, was beginning to understand. "Kevin," I said finally, "I appreciate your words. I really do. But I'm still not ready to let you back into my life. Maybe someday. Maybe with more time and more real change. But not today." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand, and I respect that. I just wanted you to know that I'm going to keep working on myself. Not to get you back, because maybe that will never happen, but because it's the right thing to do. Because I owe it to myself and to your memory." He turned to leave, but stopped. "And Mom, one last thing. Thank you. Thank you for not rescuing me when I was at rock bottom, because that forced me to learn how to rescue myself. It was the hardest and most important lesson of my life." He left before I could answer. I stood there, feeling complicated emotions: pain, hope, sadness, possibility. Maybe someday we could rebuild something. Maybe not. But that was no longer my responsibility. My responsibility was to myself, and to the hundreds of people who depended on the Eleanor Foundation. That night, back in my house, in my bed, in my reclaimed home, I reflected on the whole journey. I had lost a son, but I had gained a purpose. I had been betrayed, but I had found my strength. I had been humiliated, but I had risen stronger than ever. And I understood something fundamental. Life isn't about avoiding pain. It's about what you do with that pain when it comes. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it as fuel to build something greater than yourself. I chose to build, and in the process, I found myself, the real Eleanor Rivas. Not the mother who sacrificed herself into non-existence, not the victim who swallowed humiliations in silence, but the powerful, dignified, and unbreakable woman who had always been there, just waiting to be set free. I closed my eyes that night with a smile on my lips, because finally, after 68 years of life, I had learned the most important lesson of all. Never underestimate the power of a woman who decides to defend what is hers. Because when we remove the chains that others have placed on us, we are unstoppable. And that is the story I want the world to remember. Not the story of my betrayal, but the story of my transformation. The story of how Eleanor Rivas refused to be erased, and instead became a light for others walking in the darkness.